Hi, this is Stan Hansen from Texas. I'm fixing to do an interview with Great North Wrestling, and I hope everybody enjoys this as I talk about my career. Well, I was born in a real small town, about 1,000 people in north central Texas, about 100 miles west of Wichita Falls, about 100 miles north of Abilene, and 100 miles east of Lubbock, just absolutely in the middle of nowhere. A couple of huge ranches around there, the 4-6 Ranch, a couple of, million-acre ranches all around that area and everything. But my granddad was a farmer, and my dad farmed after World War II for about 15 years, and so that's where I was born and raised, Knox City, Texas.
And I understand you were a football player growing up.
Yeah, I played all sports, but football was my main sport. I played baseball and basketball and football, but football was kind of my avenue as I got in high school, and ended up going on to college and playing football in college on a scholarship at West Texas State, where Terry Funk had gone to school and Dory Funk had gone to school, and later Bruiser Brody went to school there, and Dusty Rhodes went to school there, and Bobby Duncombe went there, and Tully Blanchard. I mean, there's just a lot of guys that went to West Texas, ended up, mainly through the Funks, got into the wrestling business.
How did you do in college football there?
I did good. I played, back then freshmen couldn't play, but, I started my 3 years there at West Texas. I played linebacker, and I was actually a little big. It's the old Dick Butkus style, linebacker. And of course, they've all gotten bigger, stronger, faster, with time. But I was about 240, and pretty good middle linebacker.
Now, did Dick Murdoch ever actually play at West Texas State? Because I heard that he would often do the alumni games. But
he did do the alumni games. Dickie was a great athlete, and he was a legend around Amarillo, and everybody loved Dickie, and but I don't think he actually went to school at West Texas, but I heard that from a number of sources that he did end up playing a few of the alumni games, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Were any of the other athletes that went on to become wrestlers playing there at the same time that you were playing?
Well, I met Bruiser Brody there. He was there for a little while, but he left school after my freshman year, or during my freshman year. And Terry Funk was older, so he was already out, and Bobby Duncombe was already out, and Marced Solis, Tito Santana, he came in as a freshman. I actually was as a freshman assistant coach when he came in, and he ended up getting into wrestling. And I think Tully was behind him. I don't remember Tully being on that team. I think he came in, and Kelly Kanitsky came. Ted DiBiase ended up coming in right after me, so there was 2 or 3 different little generations of wrestlers that came.
Is it true that Brody was known pretty well for his off-campus antics?
Yeah, that's true. Frank had a little wild side. He was our coach who ran the program. We call him behind his back the Fat Man. He was about 5'10" and about 400 pounds, ex-Marine, and man, he ran off a lot of guys, but he made a lot of good football players too. Anyway, and he was probably one of the first people in the state of Texas. This is in the in the 60s that recruited blacks from back in the East Coast, Pennsylvania, and so forth. So we had a whole group of like kind of Yankee guys, and Brody came in with Larry Brazon and some guys. I guess they actually Frank played at Iowa State for a year, and then he left there for some reason and came to West Texas. And anyway, there's a lot of kind of Yankee guys, and they had a completely different attitude than most of the, the Texas and, Southern boys. So anyway, Frank had a different kind of personality, a little big city personality more than country type West Texas, So he kind of maybe rubbed things, a little wild, obviously.
And how did you end up getting into professional wrestling out of football?
Well, I'd gone up a couple years to Baltimore and got cut really late, and I came back and I finished college and I graduated, and then I signed as a free agent with the San Diego Chargers. And I had a teaching job. They were holding a teaching and coaching job for me in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And it was at the very end of the preseason again, and I finally had they said, we got to fill the position because we're starting. So anyway, I'd probably would have been cut at the very last. Maybe it would have been taxied, but anyway, I decided to go on into teaching because, I was on the borderline. Pro football and like anything, the talent is so good. The all pros are all pros. I mean, you can just, I tried to block against Ted Hendricks and, Bubba Smith and those guys, I mean, they are legitimate, great athletes, just a foot above everybody, Mike Curtis and people like that. And the rest of the football players are all pretty much even. And, if the right place at the right time, somebody that wouldn't make it could make it, so, but the all pros were really good. And anyway, I realized that, that I wasn't in that, for sure, in that caliber. So it's time to go into teaching. And once I got into teaching, I write about it and told everybody 100 times, but my first paycheck from a teacher was $477 a month. And I looked at it and I said, God, how are you going to raise a family? How are you going to, how are you going to make it, And so anyway, Terry had gotten to know me in college. I used to go to the matches and watch him, and a bunch of us would all go down and happy hour and then go to the matches and have a good time at the wrestling matches. And Terry just kind of noticed me, and I favored Terry. And when I first got there, a couple of the assistant coaches that were my coaches were actually really good friends with Terry. He says, "Guy, you look just like Terry Funk," And of course I knew who he was. I'd heard, knew about wrestling a little bit, not a whole lot, but anyways, through that relationship, Terry and I developed a little bit of not a friendship, but acquaintance and so forth. And after football, he says, if you're ever interested, I never ever thought about it that much, but so that's how it was. I was starving, teaching, and I realized that maybe a chance to get into wrestling and make a little bit of money that I, didn't get to make in pro football. So.
And what was the training like?
Well, there wasn't no training, There wasn't any training. There was just a lot of great talent in the Amarillo territory. Moose Morawski and Carl von Steiger. And those are the two guys that really took me under their wing, and taught me a lot of stuff. And of course, Terry and Junior and Dory Senior was still alive at the time, and they kind of pulled me aside, showed me how to get a headlock and get an arm bar, and and basically that's it. Now get in the ring and learn, and that's it. There was no training, and I don't know if that's good or bad, but I think it's probably good, because you have a chance to go out and watch, and you develop. You watch somebody do something that looks good, and then you think, golly, maybe I can do that. But this I'm old school, so who's to say what the right way is? Nowadays they go through all this training and everything, and obviously they're pretty well, seasoned and polished and everything by the time they get in there, if they're lucky enough to get in. But in our situation in the old days, I mean, you just basically had to learn as you go, and I was really fortunate to have like a lot of guys that were in the main event one night, but they might be on the opening match the next. So I was getting to work with really top talent that treated me nice, and so that kind of played over. I always tried to treat the young talent, because I was young and I got treated good. A lot of guys didn't get treated good. I'm not helping nobody, they'd say, but I didn't have that attitude. Anyway, had a lot of good guys teach me a lot of stuff.
Were you always a heel from the start?
No. Obviously in the beginning I was probably more, I was booked from West Texas and college kid and young, so I was, babyface first little while, but I was attracted to Terry's heel. I mean, he was a babyface, of course, in the Amarillo territory, but Dick Murdoch too. But I mean, God, there were some great heels, Cyclone Negro and I'm just Cyclone Negro and Bobby Hart. He was from Canada. He was a great heel, wrestling heel, and underneath the mask is a Patriot and everything. So and the Beast, he was instrumental too. What a great heel. So I was attracted to all those guys, and I guess in my mind, I always wanted to be a heel.
Would Mid-South have been your first territory after Amarillo?
No, I actually went to Dallas, and the Red Bastien was the booker, and Fritz, and Dallas was like 3 different territories. Dallas, and then they had San Antonio, and then they had Houston. There's 3 different promoters. Blanchard, was San Antonio, and then God, I can't believe the Houston, Paul Bosch. He was, and probably the best payoff man in the whole country. Everybody loved to work for Paul. And top guys could make, $3,000 or $4,000. Which is unheard of back then. When the opening match was making 100, or opening matches making 25 to 50 or something. But in Houston, it was you could always count on a good payday, so everybody loved to go to Houston. But Dallas was the first place that I kind of got a push, and yeah, actually, before that though, it was Mid-South. I did end up going to Louisiana from Amarillo, and Bill Watts. Grizzly Smith was the booker in the beginning, but Watts came in and changed a lot of things, and so I was really green, and Watts brought in a bunch of really great talent, which was Dick Murdoch and Killer Carl Cox and Don Jardine, the spoiler. I mean, they were really seasoned, much better talent than Frank and I. But that's where Frank and I kind of got teamed up together in Mid-South. So
did he get into the business after you or before you?
Frank? He got in after me, actually, a little bit after. He was 3 years older, but he had worked around Texas. After he played. Some semi-pro football there, in San Antonio, and then he was a newspaper sports writer for the Dallas Morning News and a couple of other, which is a big paper, covered high school. I guess he wrote a little article or something, for a little while, and he bulked up. He was in college. He was like, 225, and he was 6'4", and he was on the thin side actually. But when I saw him in Dallas, he was trying to get broke in. He'd bulked up, man. He was like 300 pounds big, so he was trying to get into the business when I first met him again after college.
So was that Bill Watts that put you guys together, or did you guys have that idea on your own?
No, it was actually Grizzly Smith.
Okay.
Before Bill Watts came in there, he kind of put us together, you know, and then we were a tag team, and we could have been the champions, or I think we might have been the tag champions or something there. And Watts came in, and you know, over a period of time changed a lot of that around, you know. And so I mean, we were with Buck Robley on the northern end, which was the small money towns, you know, and all the other guys worked in New Orleans and Jackson, Mississippi, and places, and we're doing, you know, we're making, you know, good money, and they were doing well because they were, in honesty, you know, they were probably, you know, they were better talent, you know, experienced talent and everything. But so Frank and I were kind of had to run around the north end, just barely making ends meet. I had to sleep in my car, and you know, have to try to find somebody to stay with on the road, and it was tough, and it ate at Frank, you know, for probably his whole career. But you know, and that ate at me too, you know, for a long time. But I ended up going back in there, and Watts treated me like, you know, after I'd gone through New York, and he treated me well as he, you know, I guess can. So, you know, I didn't hold that kind of bad feeling where Frank was me against them kind of attitude.
Right. There was a couple confrontations with him and Watts, I heard.
Well, you know, I don't know about that. I mean, I'm sure we all had confrontations with Bill, you know, but you know, nothing physical or anything, just you know, verbal type stuff. You know, that's just a kind of that's the business.
And how did you end up going to New York for the first time there?
Well, like I said, I went into to Dallas, and that's Red Bastine and everything. And a guy named Mike Padusis, an old timer from Steubenville, Ohio, who was good friends with Bruno, was living in Dallas, and he hung around the wrestling business. He wasn't wrestling anymore, but he came and he saw me, and I guess he ended up saying, hey, you know, he liked my style or something, and so he called Bruno, and then Bruno was always probably looking for somebody, you know, somebody new to work against, you know, and somebody fresh. So anyway, Bruno called me, and then Bruno called Vince, and then Vince called me, and so, you know, Red Bastine was really nice as a booker. I was involved a little bit. I was like the number 2 guy. The Stomper was the number 1 guy in the Dallas territory, and J.J. Dillon was his manager, and they were the top, for sure, the top heel. And then I was kind of like the number 2 guy, but you know, I knew exactly where I was, and I liked that, you know. And but anyway, so Red Bastine gave me my blessings and say, hey, go on, you know, and I appreciate, you know, him probably giving me a good word. And anyway, that's how I got there, Mike Padusis.
So it was planned from the start that you were going to have the matches with Bruno?
Well, I don't know if it's planned. I mean, that was the way that the system worked in the old WWF, you know. Bruno was the champion, and they would bring in different, you know, top guys. And I was not a top, you know, I wasn't considered, you know, a top guy. But they had Bruno was working when they brought me in. He was working with superstar Billy Graham, Ernie Ladd, and Ivan Koloff. I mean, 3 of the top heels in the whole country at the time. So they, you know, you went through that, and they were. So at the time I came in and I ended up working against Bruno, they were through working, you know, the way the system was, they were through working with Bruno in the Garden, but they were still going to be working with him in Pittsburgh and Boston and Philly. And so all those guys, you know, you'd work all the way around the whole territory.
And we've done a few interviews with Billy Graham, so I'll just bring it up. What were your memories of knowing him over the years?
Well, you know, he was like the top guy. You know, I mean, he was one of the top guys that I was following, and you know, I ended up hurting Bruno. So, you know, I mean, I slammed him on the back of his neck and broke his neck, and you know, he was luckily it didn't have any kind of nerve damage, but it did hurt him, and he was out. And so Billy Graham and Ladd and all those guys, you know, and Koloff, they didn't get a chance to finish their run, right? So it cost them a lot of money, you know, that they should have been making. So, but they never outwardly ever held it against me, you know, and things like that happened. But I'm sure I cost them a lot. But you know, Billy Graham I think he was probably one of the first big muscle heads, you know, I guess, to, you know, do that gimmick. And then, you know, there's others after him. But
and you mentioned the breaking Bruno's neck. Did Bruno hold any type of animosity towards you over that?
He never showed that, and to this day, you know, he's just been the classist act. And you know, we had a chance here lately to touch base with each other at the WrestleMania in Dallas, and you know, we got a chance to. My family got to meet him and everything, and he's just been a class act. And I mean, he gave me some good advice. He said, "Don't stay around forever, you know, and get beat down, you know, so you know you can come back." And so I kept that, and I kept that advice to me, and followed it, and it. Got heat with some of the higher ups of the WWF at the time, because you know, I wanted to maybe come back and work against Bruno and you know, so I followed his advice.
What was the Shea Stadium match like with Bruno? Because that was such a huge event at the time.
Yeah, it was. You know. You know, of course, it was a combination of, you know, Muhammad Ali and, you know, Inoki. And then Andre fought Chuck Wetner, you know, here in New York. And then you know, Bruno came back from his broken neck, you know, against me. And so they closed-circuited that all around the United States. I guess they, you know, in different territories in the NWA and everything. But I heard only in the Vince's territory that did it really draw any kind of money. And mainly it was to see Bruno come back. It wasn't to see Stan Hansen or anything. It was to see Bruno come back, and it was quite impressive. And yeah, people were, you know, really excited to see Bruno come back.
They hadn't done a stadium show in that territory for a while, I don't think, before that.
You know, I heard that they had done one before with Pedro Morales and somebody in New Jersey, or you know, I don't know where it was, but anyway, this was Shea Stadium. Of course, it's gone, but you know, it was, you know, about 40,000 people or something, I guess. I can't remember, but it was good, and they closed-circuited it all around their territory, and evidently it did good there too.
Was Freddie Blassie your manager all of your runs with the WWE, or was it?
I'm trying to. Yeah, I went back through there. Let's see, 80, 81. I think he was. Yeah, I think he was.
What did you think of him?
I like Freddie. You know, he was, of course, he was actually a huge star in his day. You know, as a wrestler, West Coast, East Coast, Georgia, a lot of places he was, and
Japan too, I think.
Yeah, that's right. You know, that's right. He was way back there against Ricky Dozan, and you know, before they split it up, before Baba and Inoki. You know, so that's right. He was, but Freddie was like I said, just an older guy, and he had a lot to bring to the class, you know, and but It was one of those deals, and I decided, and I'm sure a lot of people did, that the manager is important, but the manager is, there just to kind of get the superficial heat on you in the beginning. But and I told Freddie, I said, I don't want to offend you, but you can have 30 seconds to get Freddie as the manager over, but I get the other minute and a half because it's my personality and everything else. So, so once we kind of got that straightened out, it was, they would have taken the whole 3-minute interview if they could. And, there's nothing wrong with that because he was instrumental. And along with Captain Lou and the Wizard, they were the 3 managers. And, they were there for a reason.
And you feuded with Bob Backlund in your second run a little bit. What are your thoughts on those matches?
Well, Bob and I are a completely different style. Bob's more of a wrestler, and a great wrestler, and I've said it here just recently. But as far as athletic, he's the best athlete that I think ever come through the wrestling. He's just a phenomenal athlete, just in great shape and everything, and and he started a lot like me, starving, living in my car. We went through some hard times. Got to know him actually in Amarillo, where he got a chance to, they pushed him with his amateur background and everything, and a lot of stuff. And so, we ended up touching base in '81, and he was the champion. And of course, I was coming out of Japan. New Japan Pro Wrestling actually booked me in there with Vince, and so and they had a few conditions that they wanted followed on me, and I told them, I said, well, I don't think they will accept anything like that, but they ended up doing it, and so then I held them to it and got a little heat because of our original agreement with New Japan. But Bob was the champion at that time, and then I worked a little bit with Bruno also, and he was still wrestling. So, but Backlund was the champion. He was good.
Okay, so when you worked with Backlund in Japan, did you think that helped establish you in Japan to begin with?
No, I think I was already somewhat established by the time I worked with Bob. I tell you, who got me established in Japan was Andre the Giant.
Oh, yeah.
He was, Andre came over. Andre was a smart guy, the Giant can only go around as the Giant so many times, and you can only have so many handicap matches in Japan, and so he was looking for somebody opponent, and I was getting pushed by New Japan, and so I ended up just into the ring together, and for whatever, some kind of a Madison Square Garden tour or something, and Andre was there, and I fought him like I was fighting everybody in Japan, and Andre was smart enough to hear the people react, and so he was looking for an opponent, and I think that he so golly, this is the guy I can take. He's another Gaijin. He's not a Japanese. And but anyway, Andre was the one that so he sold for me, and we ended up building up into one of the most classic matches, I guess, one of the top matches of all time, I guess, in Japan. It's been voted as Andre against I in this big tennis stadium. But I always told Andre that I appreciated him. He really got me over in Japan. The Japanese pushed me too and promoted me the right way.
Did you ever have the opportunity to go out drinking with Andre?
Yeah, sad to say I did. I did for a little while. I was long gone, long before he gave up. Yeah, he was notorious. Not notorious. He could just drink. He was a big guy, he could drink, and he could drink beer, and I mean, he you know, he lived a good life.
Would it have been Terry Funk that brought you to Japan the first time through his connection?
Yeah, the Funks did book me the very first time in '75, I think. Yeah, '75, and the next time I was coming out of New York, and Vince Sr. booked me for New Japan this time. I went for All Japan and Baba the first time through the Funks. They were booking for Baba, and but the next time Vince booked me, and then after a couple of tours there, New Japan came and said, is Vince booking you, or are you booking yourself? And I said, no, I'm booking myself. So that ended up causing, a little heat between Vince Sr. and me, and, and maybe rightfully so from his point of view. But, I always felt like I wanted to be in control of my, my own career, and try to let my talent take it where it goes.
And you teamed with Hulk Hogan in Japan.
I did. I ended up, Hogan was coming and a little bit, and we ended up being teamed up and did pretty good together. And Hogan had a few other opportunities, in the States, and ended up going back and becoming one of the top guys ever, I guess.
When you were teaming with him, were you surprised on how well he ended up doing, or did you see that when you were teaming?
Well, I mean, when you're 6'8" and got a unbelievable body and so forth. I mean, he had a unique look and everything, and the look is at least half of it in it in some ways, and so no, I wasn't surprised. I mean, I'm not surprised that he didn't. He was another guy that, he didn't have it easy getting in either. He had a hard time. I think Matsuda broke his leg and first time, and he kept going. He was living on the beach, and barely able to make it. So good for him. He was a smart guy.
And you feuded with Antonio Inoki in New Japan. What were your memories of that? Because he's such a legend there.
Yeah, well, he's a great talent. Just like you said, they're the ones that gave me the opportunity to really get over and establish my my career there in Japan. Was New Japan and Inoki, and. But I tell you, Tiger Jet Sane, who was their top heel at the time, and he was the one that influenced me a little bit. I'd been there with the Butcher. I was fortunate the first two times I went with Abdullah the Butcher and saw him and his character and everything. And the next time I saw Tiger Jet Sane, and I said, golly, man, I want to try to develop some kind of style, like these guys. And I was really fortunate, but Inoki gave me that opportunity, and I ended up. They promoted me well, and they actually were instrumental in taking me to New York in '81, and like I'd mentioned earlier, so.
Would the Butcher have been one of the highest paid foreigners in Japan?
I don't know anything about anybody else's money. That's what I always, I like not knowing anything. I don't want to know. That way it doesn't get into my ego or anything, I made a deal for myself, and, if I'm happy with it, that's all that mattered.
And you ended up actually beating Antonio Inoki.
I did, I mean, I guess they talk about that I'm one of the few that, or the only one or whatever, that actually beat both of them, but
Baba
and Inoki, but
So speaking of Baba, how did you end up making the switch to All Japan?
Well, they went and got New Japan, ended up going and getting Abdullah the Butcher. So they started this war, in talent, which is that's good. I mean, it's good for the talent, isn't it? But I was getting pushed, and they were pushing me good, and they, they brought Abdullah over, and it was big news and everything, and so I was sitting there looking, with Hogan and I were teamed up, and I mean we both, saw it, and Hogan ended up going back to the States, and I was just sitting there saying, God, well, I wonder where they're bringing him in, where's this leave me? They were pushing me too, so I mean, do we need the butcher? We were doing good business. So anyway, Terry Funk got a hold of me, and because we had a relationship from college, and he broke me into the business. So.
And he was in charge.
He
of
was
booking,
with All Japan
All
and John
Japan.
Baba, so they said, "Are you interested?" I said, "Well, I don't know, man. They really treat me good here, and I got a good job and so forth." But he says, "Well, let's talk, and let's meet." And I said, "Okay." So anyway, I met with Baba, and one of the things going back, Bruno always told me, he says, he worked for Baba, and even though Vince was working with the Inoki, Bruno only worked for Baba. And he told me, way back there in '76, he said, you can trust Baba, Baba's word. And that always stuck with me, and so anyway, I met with Baba, and, we made a deal, and we had to keep it quiet for a while and be sure everything was done the right way, and anyway, ended up going to All Japan and ended up working 25 years for him. And we had a contract, in the beginning, for like a couple-year contract. But after that, everything was just on a handshake. There was never a contract between us, and he trusted me, and I obviously I trusted him, and it lasted a long time.
And All Japan is where you were teaming with Brody a lot.
Yeah, I ended up, Frank was their kind of what I was on New Japan. They were pushing Frank, in the same kind of way in All Japan at the same time. And King Curtis and Mark Lewin, and a lot of the NWA type guys, and they were through the Funks, and DiBiase was coming, and Dick Slater. I mean, they had some really good American talent, but for whatever the reason, Baba was looking for something. So because Brody and ours history, back in with Watts and everything, it was kind of a dream team to put Brody and Hansen together, and so that's when it came over. It wasn't so, that was a combination that had a lot of potential.
And you had a feud with the Funks there, is that correct?
Yeah, the Funks were over, and I say this, but Terry Funk, particularly Terry. Dory was well respected, and the Funk Brothers, of course, was a great tag team, and everybody liked them. But as a babyface, though, there was nobody, no Japanese, nobody over more than Terry. I really believe that. In about '81 and '82, he was over, and so here he was, and I mean he was involved in getting me over, a little bit. But I was strictly, working not through Terry. I've worked, with John Baba face to face, so it wasn't like, they were part of their business over there, and here they were, the older team. I mean, older in the sense they were the more established team. They were a little bit older, but not that much older, so, but when Brody and I got together, there was, just a brand new team, and, the Funks weren't going to just lay down and let Brody and Hansen, and so we had to go out and fight, and, I ended up going, singles against Terry a lot, and, it was real competition. They were trying to hang on to their position, and we were trying to, fight our way up, so it, there was real competition. Was it a shoot? No, but it was dadgum 95% shoot. You know, there was. I mean, I never hit anybody as hard in my whole life that I hit Terry Funk. You know, that's true, and I'm sure he did the same to me.
For fans that might not be aware of the Japanese style of wrestling, can you just explain what the difference is between Japanese and American?
Without sounding too, you know, New Japan had a little different, a little faster pace, not less NWA wrestling holes, you know, back, I mean, you know, you get in the hole, work a hole for, you know, 10 minutes and stuff. And that's a great style, and I think it could come back because people just don't see it now. They see nonstop 958 spots, you know, in 10 minutes, you know, and nobody ever registers or anything. Anyway, but that style was the All Japan style, Baba's style. Our success was the way Jet Sane did it, and myself, and, you know, established this hell bent for leather, just keep on going, you know, just, I mean, and it took gas. It takes a lot of, in good shape, you know, I mean, and I was fortunate to have good legs and good shape, and I could go. And I mean, I wasn't stronger than very many people, but I could just keep going. And that kind of style became the Japan style. So when Baba asked me to come over, you know, I said, well, you know, because I knew their style was more the NWA type of style, you know, and I said, well, you know, I don't want to. He says, no, don't get, I want your style. So, you know, don't change. I don't, we want. So he knew that, you know, that was the direction that All Japan needed to go. And so that's why he hired me. And I think, you know, I took it as, all right, you're going to have to keep up now, you know, and forced all those guys to end up changing the style into what became Japanese style wrestling. But
and in Japan,
in the beginning, it wasn't that way.
If you don't assert yourself in Japan, you'll just get eaten up. Is that pretty much true, especially in your day? Like if you don't actually fight back and try and be dominant, some of those Japanese guys would just take advantage.
Yeah, of course. And you know, the Japanese were great. I mean, they all had the ability to go too. You know, they just didn't go because that wasn't the style. But they, you know, they didn't lay down. And when they saw how much Frank and I were going just tooth for nail and everything, it changed them. You know, what are they going to do? Bend over back? This is their country. You know, you know, they're the company. You know, we're just gaijins coming in. And so, you know, it forced them to fight back, and they did, you know, and that's eventually that just changed the whole wrestling style.
And what are your thoughts on Terry Gordy, who was a star in All Japan as well?
Yeah, he was the guy that they were grooming to replace me, you know, for sure. And just a great talent, just a great talent, a great guy, just awesome guy. Just loved Terry. He was my partner and he was my opponent. Him and Steve Williams, you know, teamed up, and you know, they were really good. But Terry Gordy was, you know, started when he was 14 or something. You know, I mean, he had been wrestling, and he was just a great talent.
And how did you end up in the AWA for your stint there?
Well, how did I? You know, I was working a little, you know, I'm trying to remember what years, all the years run together, but I was working a little bit in the States. Mainly I was going to Japan, but I was still working. I worked in Georgia a little bit for Ole Anderson and Georgia Championship Wrestling, and he would allow me to go back and forth to Japan. Japan came first, I told him, you know, and he accepted that. And in the meantime, I guess he had a relationship with Vern, and he said, you know, does Vern want to, you know, like you to come in there? And so anyway, it ended up, Baba and I, ended up going up to Vern, to AWA, and we didn't meet together, the three of us, but Baba was there for some reason, and he had a relationship with everybody and everything. So, but anyway, so Vern said, hey, come in, you can still go to Japan, and so forth and so on. And I said, okay, that sounds good, because, everybody was signing all these big contracts, and everything, and I didn't have any kind of contract. I just had my contract with Baba, but that was just a handshake deal by then, and everybody was going on, events and all these wars were kind of going on, and here in the States, and it was heating up. Hogan had come back and everything. So anyway, ended up making a kind of a deal to go work for Vern and the AWA, and that's how I got it, as long as I could keep going to Japan.
And you ended up winning the title for Mercury.
Yeah, and that's another thing. See, I never dreamed I'd get the belt. I was not a guy that wanted a belt. I wanted to go after the belt. I never even dreamed that I'd get the belt. They'd want me to put the belt on. But Martel and I have a long history. It goes back, to the old Dallas territory, and anyway, he was the champion, and he says, yeah, they want me to put the belt on you. And I said, yeah, really? Anyway, so we worked something out, and I got the belt, and then after about a month or 6 weeks, they're just giving me these squash jobs on TV, and there's nothing, they're not, who am I working? I'm going to work against, a few return matches against Martel, but against Nick. They had this, anyway, they just didn't promote, I didn't think they were promoting me. I'd go there and I'd look and it'd be blank, and they'd get some guy, they'd come in just for TV, and they'd put my name. I said, what are you doing? When are you going to promote? When am I going to, give me Kurt Hennig. Give me somebody that I can go out there and go crazy with, and draw some money. And I just felt like, and this is my personal opinion, I just felt like that they basically put it on me to use it as a way to put it just on somebody else, and that's not me. I didn't ask for the belt, but if you're not going to promote me, as the champion and give me an opportunity to go out there, I could have drawn them a lot of money, man. I'm telling you, I could have. If you don't have that kind of confidence in yourself, then why are you in the business? But anyway, it didn't work out, and then all of a sudden, they just just come some kind of surprise deal, and I go, nah, I'm not. So anyway.
Is it true that you were actually in the building the night that they wanted you to drop it?
Yeah, I was in the building. I was face to face,
And it just didn't make sense.
No, it just
would hurt you in Japan, I guess.
You hadn't promoted me. You never mind Japan. I think Baba was. I was really involved in his business, but he never gave me direction. As far as the American part, he just figured I'd do the right thing. And anyway, so yeah, it was a confrontation. And
is it true you actually ran over the belt before you returned it, or was that just a rumor?
Belt got beat up. That's all I got to say.
And
it was beat up before I got it, but it was beat up a little bit more when he got back.
And you were at All Japan, but they let you go back to New Japan for that famous match with Vader. What was behind that deal, and just your thoughts on that insane match? That's probably one of your most famous matches.
Yeah, Leon. I knew Leon in the AWA. He was just breaking in, and I guess it ate at Leon for a long time, and we're good friends. I like Leon, and I think he likes me, and you know, I mean, we have a part in history together, you know. But you know, he was you know, he was just starting out and everything, and they put me in a couple of matches with him, and you know, I went out there, you know, as a veteran, and in the sounds in the right direction that the match should have gone, because of my position and Leon just starting out, even though he was a huge, big, strong athlete and all these, I mean, a legitimate, you know, type of guy, you know. So anyway, I went out, we had a couple of matches, and he's told me since that, he says, you know, I read where they said there's never been a bigger mismatch in the history of pro wrestling as Stan Hansen and Vader, you know. And I guess it really probably, you know, it hurt him, you know, it hurt him to read that, you know. And so anyway, so this match came about. Somehow they had a joint show over there, and they had a match between me and Leon, and you know, and he was wearing this big thing, and the Vader costume, and everything. I mean, he was over. I mean, he was over big time. And anyway, they put us together, and it just, I mean, I knew it was going to be, you know, big old stiff match, you know, and sure enough, I guess, I mean, he was telling me the story here at WrestleMania just here recently when he introduced me, you know, he was saying that he was walking, he told Inoki that, he says, you know, I can't carry this thing on my shoulder and step up there to the ring with, he says, well, why not? And he said, well, Stan Hansen, you know, he's not going to let me walk in here into the ring with this thing on. And so he says, well, you know, I'm paying you to wear it or whatever. So anyway, sure enough, as he's coming up, I charge over, and I don't remember, you know, per se, but he was telling me, he says, you know, you hit the thing came back, broke my nose right off the bat. He said, you know, the thing hit me in the face and it broke my nose, and the guy set it down. Anyway, he come in, so now he's seeing red, right? Anyway, we just pounded the dog out of each other, you know, and it was, you know, and I ended up, you know, I guess it hit him in the eye, and, you know, and then he had this mask on too, and he pulled the mask off, and I, you know, I couldn't see, I could see his eye was, but, you know, I couldn't tell because I can't see past here, you know, and, but anyway, so that's how it was. But,
so you just were protecting yourself. He was being
well,
really
yeah. I mean, he was pounding on me, and actually, you know, Mike Tyson fought Buster Douglas the next day. Yeah. And so, you know, in the dressing room, or, you know, sometime after, you know, Leon said, are you going to the fight? And I said, no, I'm not going to the fight. And he says, there won't be any punches thrown harder tomorrow night than were thrown in that match tonight. I'm going home.
And you guys outdrew them too, didn't you?
Huh?
Didn't you guys outdraw the Mike Tyson fight?
You know, I don't know.
You
know, I don't know. I don't know that.
And you ended up being the No Holds Barred movie. How did that happen?
Well, I mean, I guess they had a part there, and you know, it was Vince's and Hogan's movie, you know, and they asked if I wanted to be in that, you know, have a part in the movie. Yeah, I'd never done a movie. I was really happy to do, you know, it was fun, you know, and you know, had a couple of, I guess, classic line everybody talks about is, you know, is the line that I give in the bathroom or something, you know, with I grab these two guys, you know, but, you know, it was a lot of fun. I wish I'd pursued that a little bit more now, you know, at an older age. I think I could have done some characters in movies, but
that was actually I liked that movie a lot, actually. And you did a great job in it. And was there any talk
Hogan too, you know, yeah. I mean, it was a good movie. I mean, you know, it was, I always tell this story. We went to the matinee theater. I took all my family. My little daughter was about 10 or, I don't know, maybe a little older, 12 years old. And we're watching the scene, you know, and I'm the bad guy, right, until the real bad guy comes out, Zeus comes out, and he ends up, you know, ripping the hair out of my head and all this other stuff, you know. And and we're the about 5 people with me, and we're the only people in the movie theater, you know. And when Zeus does this, my daughter jumps up in my lap, starts saying, "It's okay, Daddy, it's okay." I never forget that my whole life. That's what I remember about the movie.
Was there any talk of you joining WWE around that time, since you already knew Hogan and you were?
You know, there was a time when, but I just made a verbal deal to go in for part-time, you know, in and out for Ole and the WCW.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, like a week before, and then all of a sudden I do get a call, and you know, they said, "Yeah, I'd like to come in. You can do this," and you know. And I said, "Golly, man, I made a handshake deal with you know, and I can't do it." So anyway, missed it. And but after the match with Hogan, and later on in Japan,
the summit you had, it was called the Wrestling Summit or something, that match.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wasn't even supposed to be on the card.
Okay.
You know, it was Terry Gordy was supposed to be against Hulk Hogan, and some joint deal again. And anyway, at that time, Vince said, "If you're ever ready to give up Japan," this is Vince Jr.,
yeah.
and you know, give me a call and come in, you know. But I never ended up giving up Japan.
So for your WCW run, it was Ole Anderson that brought you in?
Yeah.
You knew him from Georgia Championship Wrestling?
Yeah, Ole was the main guy. I mean, there were some other suits, you know, people from the TV part, and I guess there was somebody else ahead of Ole too. I don't, you know, but I don't even know what it was, but it was.
How did you?
It was a good deal because the only time I ever got a guarantee in the United States, and I was able to, you know, do that and still go to Japan.
How did you like working with Lex Luger?
You know what? I mean, everybody. I have nothing bad to say about Lex Luger at all. He was really professional, and you know, he said, "Tell me what." I mean, I did end up spitting tobacco on his chest, but and all that stuff. But that was all in character, you know. That wasn't because I disliked Lex Luger or anything, or disrespected him or anything. I was spitting tobacco on everybody, so, you know.
Do you think they kind of dropped the ball with you there? I mean, it was
memorable.
Yeah,
of course they did. They you know, it was, they really blew it, and I think I could have, that whole character was getting over unbelievable, you know, but.
Is it true that you left WCW because they had some Desperados angle that they wanted to do with you?
Yeah, they wanted to do some kind of cartoon thing, you know. Dusty had come in, Ole was kicked out. Dusty had came in, and they were going more towards the entertainment, per se, than the wrestling. And I liked all those guys, you know. They were nice guys, you know, Dutch Mantell and Randy Colley and somebody else. And, you know, there's 3 guys. Black Bart, and all great guys.
Yeah.
And, but, you know, I didn't want to be a cartoon. They had me when I worked against Vader again, because they wanted to redo that match. They just kind of threw this together out in Phoenix and stuff, and they had me Missy Hyatt, and they had, you know, they put on some kind of, they said, you know, put on some big old boxers, you know, and I'm going, I'm not going to do this, you know, and so that's where I made up my mind. And there were some other personal things. My wife was pregnant, expecting her son, and I said, you know, when it gets too much for you, let me know, and I'm gone. And so, I mean, there was a combination of things, but yeah.
What did you think of Dusty as a booker? From your experience?
Well, I didn't work with Dusty from a booker. I worked against Dusty, you know, and you know, he was a little hard to work with, you know, because he's Dusty's Dusty, and he was a unique character, and he worked his style, and he was extremely successful in promoting his style and everything. And he was, at one time, I mean, he was probably one of the legitimate guys like Andre that could go around the country and go in sight unseen, you know, and wrestle against somebody and would pop their houses. So, you know, Dusty had a unique talent, you know, and was in a great position.
And as you were finishing up your career in All Japan, you had a feud with Misawa. What are your thoughts on that feud?
Well, I mean, it's I was involved with all those that second generation of guys, starting with Misawa, you know, Kobashi, Kawada. Those three guys were just great opponents. And I mean, I was lucky to be in that. Things happened, you know, over in Japan that caused, you know, Tenyu left, took, you know, a lot of the top, the middle and higher middle hierarchy talent with him. And so all of a sudden, Baba is there, and he's got these, you know, Misawa, Kawada, Kobashi, young guys. And I was involved in, you know, working and getting those guys, and those guys fought me, and I fought them back, and, you know, we had some great years, the best years of all Japan. Business was done during that time, you know, when you know, those three guys were coming up and taking over, yeah.
And how did All Japan change once Giant Baba died?
Well, I mean, you know, there was some politics going on inside Japan that only Japanese people are divvy to. Nobody, I mean, there's all the scoop sheets and everything, you know, they think they know everything. They don't know nothing, you know. That's my opinion, you know. It's just what stooges feed them, you know. But anyway, you know, what goes on but inside the Japanese, you know, is, you know, I sure didn't know what was going on. So, you know, All Japan changed. Baba, of course, I mean, I knew that once Baba passed away, then things would have to change. And sure enough, you know, Misawa eventually took most everybody and formed a new company. But Ms. Baba was trying to get to a certain time, you know, anniversary date. And so it, you know, I was, you know, still involved, you know, with it, but then I had some health issues, you know, arthritic issues that came to light, and I knew that it was time for me to quit. So anyway. What
happened to your wrist there? I noticed you have a bit of the other one.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. A little too hard.
And you ended up being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Just what are your thoughts on that? And
well, I mean, wow. You know, I mean, I was inducted into another Hall of Fame, you know, the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, where all the guys voted me in a few years ago. And that, you know, that was a nice gesture. And then this year, the WWE, I wasn't ever thinking about it or anything, but just out of the blue, they decided to elect me, and man, what a great experience. The WrestleMania in Dallas, and they treated me and my whole family just super nice, and it was just you know, it was really great, and I enjoyed it, and seeing everybody, and what a production. I mean, from, you know, not that I'm knocking the Amarillo, but, you know, the production of pro wrestling in, you know, in the early 70s, you know, to what it is today, it's like light years difference, you know, and what a organization the WWE has, obviously, you know.
Is there any wrestlers in the WWE today that you like at all, from what you've heard or seen?
Yeah, JYB, you know, I mean, I met him over in Japan, and I always liked him and got along good with him, and you know, he ended up becoming, you know, a really big star and everything, and you know,
I think you were one of his heroes too, growing up.
Well,
From what I've heard.
well, I mean, like I said, I thanked him. I think for
he took your lariat too.
he kept my name out there. With everybody uses the clothesline, but he kept putting over the the lariat, and he had mentioned me over time, I guess, and that's nice. I'm glad he did that, and he threw one too, and and so I mean it's good, and so there's a lot of great talent. Young talent. I always, I don't watch it all the time, but there's some great talent out there, young guys, and Randy Orton, and second generation guys, and it's there's other people that just don't come to my mind right now, but Bradshaw was one of the guys, that was really kind of kept my name out there. That's nice. And, Johnny Ace, got to know him really good, John Laurinaitis. He was, ended up being in Japan with him a lot, and then he left and got into the promotion part of the business, the booking part or whatever. He's a good guy, and all those. Yeah, so there's a lot of talent out there, and of course The Rock is done really good. I knew his dad, and I know his granddad. And worked against Peter Maiva, and he was a real deal.
And the one territory I forgot to ask you about until now that you were popular in was Puerto Rico. You had some huge matches there in front of, I think, the largest crowds ever in Puerto Rico, some of your matches. Just if you could briefly go over your memories.
Yeah, Frank and I were going to Puerto Rico, and, that was another place we could go and do our style, and we got the opportunity, Carlos Colon was, the top baby face, and he was over, and he was a really good opponent. Didn't cry, liked it solid. So, we drew some big money down there. But I'd decided not to go back there, on my own for, and but anyway.
Did you ever have any fan attack issues there? Because
yeah, every night. I mean, they're trying to kill you. I mean, they're not trying to hurt you; they're trying to kill you. So it's tough. It's tough. When they're throwing spark plugs from right here to as hard as they can, right at your face. They're trying to kill you.
Kill them.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's what you had to do almost. You had to fight your way, But anyway, that's part of being the heel. But it's not. Nobody knows that now. There's very few people that have to.
Yeah. Speaking of which, the last question I'll ask you is, what do you think about the future of pro wrestling? There's very few places to work right now to actually earn a full-time living in pro wrestling. There's probably only 3 or 4 companies where you could do that in the entire world. What do you think about the future? Does it have a bright future? Do you think it's going to make a comeback, or?
I don't know. All I know is I'm considered an old-timer, and I'm glad to be an old-timer. Glad I came up when I did. I missed out on the big money. I missed that because I was in it for the money. That was the only reason I was in it. And I don't love the business. I'm not a second-generation guy. I was in it, try to make a living, try to get ahead. And so anyway, the future, I have no idea, except whatever the WWE's doing and the other groups, and even in Japan, they're moving in that direction. I think we got to say that's the way it's going. So that's the way it's going to be.
Oh, and I have to ask you about Brock Lesnar. What do you think of him? Because he seems to be a guy that's probably the closest to your style in the WWE now.
Yeah.
does a realistic stuff.
Well, of course, I know who he is
Yeah.
physically. I really don't
haven't
know
seen
him
much of
and
him.
everything. Obviously, he's everybody really. He's carved out a great spot, so everybody talks about him and everything knows who he is, and he goes out and, you know, getting the big money. That's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good for him.
And is there anything you want to say to your fans that are going to watch this to close this interview?
Yeah. I don't know. You know, I appreciate anybody that, you know, still remembers me and thinks a little kindly of me. And, I always tried to do it the hard way and, make it as real as it can be. And it was real. And there was real competition. And I think you can see that in a lot of my matches. The people I was trying to dominate in the ring, they didn't want me to dominate them. So there's a real amount of competition in there that squeaks through. And again, anybody that remembers me, I appreciate it, and I'm proud to be the old style wrestler.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming on with us.
Yeah, thank you. It's always good. It's always good. Now, when you get old, see, it's hard to shut up. You just keep on talking.